In this lesson today, we are going to look at how probability and statistics are used in the First Nations culture. They play a big part in the stories told by elders. For example, when they speak of how more rain than usual in a year will result in the growth of a particular plant, which then results in more of a certain type of mouse, which will result in a particular illness, this is an example of how data has been observed, collected, analyzed, and applied. So there are many stories in the First Nations culture that are passed down from generation to generation, and they're based on observations. So over the years, data has been collected on certain things. In this case, one of the things they noticed was that if you have more rain than normal, then everything's going to trickle down, and there's going to be more of a particular illness in that particular year. So they've just collected data and analyzed it and then have applied it, and that's how they pass on their stories from generation to generation. Around the world, people have passed on games as part of their culture. Both children and adults played games in all Aboriginal nations, and because most relied on symbols, these games could be played among different nations who didn't speak the same language. Many of these games were played for entertainment, but they usually had a religious meaning or were used as learning tools. These games were also symbolic of the season. Many of the games were specific for summer or winter. Through the use of these games, people would be developing hunting, problem solving, and strategy skills. However, by taking a closer look at a few of these activities, you can see that the educational value extends beyond the obvious skills they were meant to teach. Players were learning many basic mathematical concepts while enjoying these games. The idea of patterns, relationships of patterns, numbers, and operations were developed in many of the dice games. Also, the strategy games brought in ideas of problem solving and critical thinking. Practically all of these games rely on the concepts of data management and probability. This is not only true for the Aboriginal culture, but probably in many other games that are played by people all over the world. Lots of them rely on critical thinking, strategy, problem solving, patterns. You're learning a lot of math in many of the games you play, likely without even realizing it. There are two categories or types of games that are often used: games of chance and games of strategy. The games of chance often deal with dice and gambling. In such games as Hubbub or the Stick game, players use different patterns to represent point values. This concept builds on the idea of patterns and the relationships of the patterns and the idea of probability. These games also use counting sticks as a sort of data management. Experimentation with ideas of data management are also apparent by comparing games like throw sticks, where the data depends on place value, and bowl and dice, where different types of sticks hold different point values. So these are all games that were played in different Aboriginal cultures that dealt with data management, probability, counting, those sorts of things. So there was math involved in these games. If we take a look at two strategy games, you can see the different mathematical concepts developing. In that game, there is again a different data management source through the collecting of opponents' markers. So in order to keep track, they collect each other's markers. Both of the following games develop problem-solving skills and critical thinking as you try to outwit your opponent. These are significant examples of a natural learning environment and the mathematical concepts that can be abstracted from them. So the use of probability and statistics and data management was heavily seen and is heavily seen in the First Nations culture. However, it extends to many other cultures as well.